we're at that point again, where the dawn of a new major Pokemon game is among us. Last time, it was Legends Arceus, and it was a pretty great time discussing it, both before and after the game was released. But now, we're looking at the start of a whole new generation of Pokemon, Generation 9. In some ways, entering a new generation almost feels like a fresh start of sorts. And as always, during the wait for the new gen, fans will always be discussing how the games will change and improve in some ways, whether it be from a more optimistic or cynical point of view. Personally, I'm usually always pretty excited. Sure, I've had my preferences throughout the series, but there's no denying that seeing a new region and everyone sharing their experience is some of the most fun times to be had with Pokemon. But let's just jump right to the main question we have here about Scarlet and Violet. Can these end up being the best Pokemon games? The answer is yes. Thanks for watching, and with that, be sure to leave a like, subscribe. I'm kidding. Alright, fine. I'll elaborate for you guys. I don't think it's controversial at all to say that any upcoming major Pokemon entry can potentially end up being considered one of the best Pokemon games. For the most part, the series has always tried to move forward as far as accessibility and features goes. Some definitely more than others, but generally, if you like one of the core Pokemon games, you'll probably like the others to some extent too. Before we begin though, head on over to Mystic Reads where the newest part of New Beginnings is out. Today, Lucy and Sasuke have a talk. I wonder what it could be about. Go check it out to find out. Also, over on Mystic Umbreon Shorts, we have 5 daily fact videos going up of every Pokemon. And if we hit 5k on Shorts, I have a special top 5 series that I plan to release over there. So, if you're hyped up for that, go and sub over there. With that said, let's begin. So, Scarlet and Violet. What do these games have that will push this series into the next generation of Pokemon? The biggest difference here from the past generations is how these new games are being marketed as the first open world games in the series. While a lot of journalists labeled Legends Arceus as an open world game, the game was never officially marked that way and wasn't as fully open as a game like Breath of the Wild or Grand Theft Auto. The fact that it's leaning more into the open world aspect is definitely going to feel like a big shift for the series, but will be easier to adjust to as we move forward because of a game like Legends Arceus. This also means that some of the game's content does not need to be played in a specific order. And also, since the game is open world, it means the way you see the overall landscapes and areas will be different too. The art direction of the game is going to be a bigger factor than in any previous entry in order to sell the Pokemon world to you and this new map that we'll be exploring. I don't expect the game to be super visually impressive, as Pokemon has never been about excessive texture detail. But I do hope the game's overall visual composition gives the region its own sense of identity. The graphical quality of Sword and Shield was a big talking point of criticism for both those who disliked and loved the game. The most common comment being that certain environmental textures looked very plain. Legends Arceus was already an improvement on this front, and the Scarlet and Violet footage and screenshots also seem to address this to a certain extent. But there's a difference between seeing cherry-picked material and actually experiencing the game's visuals. So here's to hoping that the game has some nice surprises for us on this front. Sticking with visuals just for a little longer, I do want to note that I like some of the human character designs for the game, but I do wish the playable trainers had more of a default aesthetic identity. The default character designs have still become pretty iconic in games that featured heavy customization like X and Y. I'm hoping that maybe it'll either grow on me, or they'll listen to feedback and make some adjustments for the future of traditional Pokemon games. Look, I'm all for change, but I don't think anyone was asking for more unified plain designs as the default look. I've always enjoyed the personality of the default designs in previous games, even if I didn't always stick with them. And of course, character design is subjective, and also isn't a direct indicator of a game's quality. But I know for a fact that I'm not alone on this one. I don't want to say too much about the Pokemon's designs in this video, as we're definitely going to be talking about them more in videos that center around the actual creatures themselves. But once again, I think most of the new designs are pretty great. More specifically, is there anyone that isn't a fan of Cloth right now? Now, I'd like to take a look at how the story structure is going to be handled. This is where the game's true potential may truly be, and it may not be because of the actual narrative content. There's no way for me to be able to tell you if Scarlet and Violet stories are going to be any good. But the potential pacing and exploration of that story may end up being a genuinely interesting experience due to how the game is going to have 3 story paths. No one knows exactly how this is going to feel or play out just yet, but I'm hoping it stays true to the idea that you get to choose how you get to play, and that it doesn't try to push you in a specific direction that gives the game a formula that's too familiar after they've hyped all of this up. The 3 paths are Victory Road, which is the classic path of collecting badges and becoming champion. This one alone is already pretty interesting despite being familiar, since you'll be able to take these gems on in any order. Then there's Path of Legends, where you'll be hunting Herba Mystica, extremely rare cooking ingredients guarded by the Titan Pokemon, which will function like boss encounters. This is the one that seems the most mysterious, and I have no doubt through this path we'll be learning a lot about the region and its secrets. Lastly, there's Starfall Street, the path that sees you taking on the antagonistic team of the region. Though they seem like some type of rival school faction rather than a straight up criminal organization. It's still another somewhat familiar series trope, but we don't have enough information to know how things will play out entirely. I have high hopes for how these paths will give each individual player a unique experience, depending on how they approach them though. I'm also hoping that a lot of this means a large amount of content with substance beyond just battling for the sake of it. It really does feel like they want the adventure aspect of Scarlet and Violet to stand out more than any other game before it. And since Arceus left a pretty good impression in that regard, we may just be in for something special. A trend that really kicked in with the Alola is regional variants, and Paldea will continue this. This has done some interesting things with game balance, as it's breathed new life into Pokemon that have been in the series for quite a while with fresh new takes. When discussing the available Pokemon in Sword and Shield, Junichi Masuda did note that the team was conscious of game balance. This of course is obvious in every generation to a certain degree, as they've always made some obvious adjustments. But I'm pretty confident they're going to try to maintain a healthy meta for competitive players. Competitive has had its ups and downs, and discussing which generation has the most enjoyable meta is another discussion. But I think we may be in for one of the better eras for that particular scene. The Battle Stadium from Sword and Shield will be making a return, and I have no doubt the experience will be improved further this time around. And having accessible online battle modes to play against other players will keep the competitive community growing and healthy. If you've never gotten into, but have always been curious, this could be the generation where you may feel tempted to give it a go. There's even going to be a 4-player multiplayer mode that will apparently let you explore the region together. Pokemon was never really known for having multiplayer outside of things like battling. So I'm really hoping this particular feature ends up being good, as it could encourage the development team to expand upon it in the future. Unfortunately, it hasn't been confirmed if this will be online or local only. A new unique feature for Scarlet and Violet are the Terastal Phenomenon Pokemon. I'm not entirely sure how this sparkly transformation will fully pan out gameplay-wise, as we've only been able to see so much of it. But every Pokemon is going to be able to change their types into one of the 18 existing typings, with some being more rare than others. In the best case scenario, this will keep certain Pokemon feeling fresh and add further uniqueness to each of them. But it's hard to say for sure without experiencing it through playing the game for yourself. Though I do find it kind of funny that it can cause some Pokemon that are dual typing to suddenly become a single typing. There are also going to be Terra Raid battles, which are kind of like the Dynamax battles in Gen 8. These will also be online, so it's nice to see Game Freak maintaining ways to continue playing with your friends in different modes. This time around though, you'll be able to attack at your own pace instead of having to wait on your teammates' attacks. So that's a nice adjustment on Game Freak's end when it comes to not drawing out these battles, but still keeping them fun. That said, we'll have to see how different some of this feels with the open world setting, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic about it. It's really worth pointing out that open world aspect again, because so many things that may seem familiar at first on the surface are going to feel bigger and better if they pull their cards right with this. Open world is not inherently a game enhancer or even inherently good, but it does lend itself quite nicely to the Pokemon series. We've seen it with Legends Arceus to a certain degree, and Scarlet and Violet may be when they take some of these concepts and really let loose with them. One thing I haven't mentioned that hasn't been on my mind when it comes to this open world stuff is how the world building can also be enhanced through this. Paldea could be the best region yet, depending on how they use subtext. Imagine an area like the ruins of Alph being in Paldea and fully explorable. It could add a lot to the underlying story of the region, and I hope they aren't afraid to experiment with those types of zones. Not to mention throwing in implications or even cameos from other regions. The anime had Diantha make a few cameos that sold her celebrity status in quick, subtle ways, for example in Journeys. So even just small things like that could really breathe into Paldea being a part of the larger Pokemon world. As long as they don't go too overboard with it, I think little things like that in a game like Scarlet and Violet would do wonders to make it feel bigger. That's going to be one of the major keys to make these games feel like they're top quality. Making everything that's already existed feel bigger and better. That goes for both the Pokemon world and the substance of the features. And Scarlet and Violet definitely seem to be adding some unique features to the game as well. With the Let's Go feature, it allows you to send one of your Pokemon off to find items and auto-battle wild Pokemon, which is pretty great. It's kind of like Pokepelago and the EXP gain we used to get from the daycare combined into one. The only downside I can see to this is if Overworld Shinies return and your Pokemon knocks it out in an auto-battle. I feel if that happens to anyone, they'll never use that feature again. I know I probably wouldn't. I also wonder how this will work when it comes to having your friends in the same world as you when they let their Pokemon out. Could they start battling each other? Matter of fact, can you do stuff like trade and battle your friends without all the link code stuff since they're all in the same area? I think there's really a lot of potential there if done right. And I think that's what this all boils down to. Potential. Scarlet and Violet are huge steps for Pokemon as a franchise, and it really does seem like those steps are in the right direction. But what do you think? What are your expectations for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? Do you think they'll be able to fully capitalize on their first fully open world game in the series? After Legends Arceus, how optimistic are you for Generation 9 as a whole? What part of the game are you most excited for? Let me know down below. Hey, it's the outro. Isn't that exciting? Thank you for enjoying another Mystic Umbreon video. We're getting ready to enter the fall, and the final stretch of hype for Scarlet and Violet is here. The excitement for Pokemon's 9th generation is at its peak, and I couldn't be more excited. We've still got plenty to cover before then though, so keep yourselves locked in. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts channel. If we get the 10k followers on TikTok, and we're super close, I'll be doing a viewer's choice video. Also, if you're into fanfictions and what ifs, check out Mystic Reads. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content on there, so come and join me. That's all for now. Make sure you subscribe for more fantastic content, and I'll see you next time.